My next guest puts on some of the most successful networking events in the city. And of course, like many, those events, all of a sudden, we couldn't do it in person, and he had to turn to doing virtual events. And it has been an incredible success. I'm joined by Jarrod Goldsmith. He is the founder of eSAX Virtual Events. Jarrod, wonderful to see you. Love the fedora. You've kept it after all these years. You still keep the fedora. So, yeah, let's talk about the impact it had on you and how you were able to successfully move your events to virtual events, Jarrod.
Thank you, Derek. I mean, there's no doubt everybody's faced quite an uphill battle. And organizations, individuals, they had no choice. In my case, I would host in-person trade shows for small business in Ottawa. And I'm also a full-time musician. As an event planner and musician, I had no choice. If I didn't go virtual, I wouldn't have any businesses.
Right.
And I came across this amazing virtual platform, and I realized the benefits the week COVID hit. And I haven't looked back.
Well, let's talk about some. So what are some of the benefits of doing those virtual events?
Well, everybody knows you can get a lot more attendees because your events are not limited by geographics. You might have a lot of registrations. Will they show up? We could talk more about that later. The other benefits are there's no cost to attend. Oh, well, rather, there's no gas. You don't have to fly. You don't have to book a hotel room.
Right.
So for many events, the cost can be considerably less.
There are a lot of myths out there when it comes to virtual events. So let's go through some of those myths, and maybe you can break some of those myths for us.
Great, thank you. One of the myths, talking about cost, is people think virtual events, it's just a Zoom call. So how much cost can there be? Well, working with a professional virtual event planner on an amazing platform that's not Zoom, there are costs with this.
Right.
And it's easy to tell when you've been on a call and the person doesn't really know what they're doing because there was no budget to do an appropriate event. So it takes time to organize.
Since we have you here and you've been doing these so successfully, let's pick your brain a bit. What would you consider some of the best practices when it comes to putting on a virtual event?
Organization. You need to know, as the event planner, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to appease some sponsors? How do you help them accept the ROI for virtual events? Onboarding is such an important part. Many people might not be very technologically savvy. Having them understand whatever platform you're using ahead of time, provide promo videos, have dry runs, make sure if you're doing a hybrid event that the tech on site will work virtually. And it's just a matter of being organized like you would in a real face-to-face event.
Well, engagement's a big part, right? You put on networking events, right, where people come up and they talk to each other and they exchange business cards and they have these wonderful chats. So virtually, how do you get that type of engagement?
A lot of the times I find it can be easier to connect with people networking virtually because you can have access to, let's say, their LinkedIn, their Facebook, their website while you're talking to them. Sure, nothing will ever beat the face-to-face because you're seeing the whole body language. At least virtual, as you know, Derek, we're only professional from the waist up.
Yeah.
Ways to engage with people is follow up. Like it wasn't face-to-face in the before times. Following up is key. And trying to find something of interest. Like, everybody is intimidated of networking. We could talk a lot about networking. But virtual, it's a matter of finding commonalities.
Well, okay, you mentioned it, so let's talk about, that intimidation. People are intimidated. They're a little reluctant to approach somebody, and they don't want to sound salesy. What advice do you give people to make that experience a little smoother for themselves?
Oh, Derek, I have hundreds of videos on YouTube talking about this. Some of my favorite questions are, how did you hear about the event? Have you been on this platform before? Do you know the organizer? Have you been to one of the in-person events that these people hosted? But one of my favorites now coming out of COVID, or while we're in COVID, is, what have you been doing for the last 2 years? I'm trying to travel. Oh, where are you traveling to? And it's just outside of business. I would say don't try to make everything a sales pitch. Many of us are still looking for that gig, but when you come across as a way that's genuine, that you talk, but you're listening more, it helps you form the conversation on ways you might be able to work together and possibly help the other person.
Great advice, Jarrod. I agree, right? We don't oftentimes listen enough and be engaged in the conversation. So important when you're doing some kind of business, doesn't matter what. Thanks for joining us, Jarrod, and thanks to you at home for joining us. We'll see you next time.